Welcome back to the Idle Talk podcast. My name is Peyton, and I'm joined by my friend Jacob. Today we are talking about Survivor 46 episode Several, titled Episode Several. Now, if you haven't seen this episode, this is your spoiler warning. Go ahead and watch that before coming back and listening to this recap and analysis episode. You have been warned. Jacob, what did you think about this episode?
Is it bold of me to say that I think this was the best episode of 46 so far? Because I feel like it's a correct statement.
I don't think that is a bold statement. I think that is a valid opinion, but I also think early episodes were very strong as well.
Yeah. Well, personally, this has been my most enjoyable episode of 46 for me. I really, really liked it. I thought we got to see a lot of personalities come out. I was satisfied with who went home. Like, I wasn't upset or felt like they went out wrongly. I feel like their ejection from the game was like well timed in terms of how long we've sat with them, if that makes sense, and like the way that they've been presented in the edit. So I didn't feel like it was off-putting in the way that they left the game. So I was pleased in that aspect. I really liked, which we'll dive deeper into this, but I really liked just the personalities that we got to see, and I think that's a credit to the extra time that we're getting in this season due to the episodes being an hour and a half. Like, for instance, the banter that we got to see on the immunity challenge with Q talking to Jeff and then them playing their little alphabet game. Just getting to see that kind of stuff was really fun. So I had a lot of fun with the episode. I thought it was a good time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's easily in the top 3, probably top 2 for me. The premiere was really, really strong as well. And there have been some really strong episodes, but this is definitely one of the most well-rounded episodes so far. It feels really strong. Just from the production was really on point. The fact that you get 2 tribal councils makes it very interesting. So it was very fun to watch from that point. And the fact that they go to the immunity challenge only about 10 minutes into the episode, that some crazy stuff is going down when there's barely any episode and we are jumping right into the immunity challenge. And then the immunity challenge lasts for a good, 10, 15 minutes of the episode, it felt like. And I don't know if that's actually how long it lasted, but it lasted for a long bit of the runtime. And then also, I agree with you, we started to see a lot more personality of players that we haven't seen before start to come out. And we saw Tim, who obviously his time was cut short here in this episode. We already gave the spoiler alert, so I don't have to drop a spoiler alert here. But, Tim is one of the 2 people voted out. But during the challenge, we see a lot of Tim. And this was one of those first moments where I was like, oh, I really like Tim here. Like, this is where I'm actually starting to see who Tim is as a person. I wish I could have seen this earlier, but we spent so much time with Yanu that we didn't get to see this side of Tim as much. So I liked seeing that. We actually saw a little bit of Liz in this episode, finally a tiny bit, but we still have barely seen Liz. And, there's more of the pieces of this overall puzzle starting to come together. So I agree, this was a really solid episode. A lot of fun, a lot of drama. And that's just the nature of 2 tribal councils. Before we start actually diving into the flow of the episode, though, I want to talk about the fact that there are 2 tribal councils. That's kind of the elephant in the room here, I guess. And so I want to ask you, how do you feel about that just on a personal level, from the way the game is structured? The fact that in this new era, we have this split tribal. How do you like that? What are your opinions on it?
I kind of like it because I think it provides a chance for the players to prove their strategic dominance. And it allows for, if whoever's going to win, it allows them to have a chance to make a move and to add something to their resume, because they are going to be in a smaller group. They can work with people who they don't necessarily work with before. So you'll find yourself working with people who you might not consider, which we had Venus working with Siga and we had Hunter working with Nami. So I think it makes for interesting dynamics that can then
Hunter
bleed
working with
into
Yanu.
Hunter working with Yanu. So I think it's cool because it has the opportunity to create ripples that will bleed into the later part of the game, because going into the next tribal, Hunter could be like, oh, we work together. Let's keep working together. Venus might stick with the Siga people if they want her. I honestly see Hunter kind of integrating, based on how he was talking with the Yano people, I see him continuing to work with them. After this episode, I think the split is going to be Tevin and Hunter with the Yanu 3, and then Venus and the remaining Siga, and then Liz is just there. I think that might be how the split shakes down from here on out. I want to dive into the first part of the episode where we come back from Tribal and Venus is immediately on the defensive against Soda, which to me feels like a misplay on Venus's part to be super aggressive to someone else, like basically just straight up accuse them, and then they deny it. And she said, well, I don't see anyone else who it could be. And
yeah, it's a very bizarre moment where it was her first tribal council. So that's part of it. Hasn't gone through that before. Sees her name up there, which is difficult. And she's got this beef, and there's all this emotion that's built up, and she doesn't handle it the best way. And there's no real defense for that. She should have had that conversation privately. 100%. Yeah. I think the fact that it happened around everyone was crazy.
Yeah, I agree. And then Charlie admitting that he voted for Venus, I thought was really weird. If I was Charlie, I mean, I understand where he's coming from because he feels bad. He feels bad that Soda's getting attacked and he wants to come clean. But in my opinion, it's okay to be dishonest in these situations, and you got to do what's best for you. And in my opinion, what's best for Charlie in this situation is keeping his mouth shut.
The thing is, I don't think that's why Charlie told her. I think...
You don't think he told her because he felt bad?
Yeah, I don't think he told her because he felt bad. I think that's kind of just what he was telling Q, because Q is sitting there telling him how to play the game, and he just is trying to get Q to leave him alone. Q is starting to get into this kind of annoying Survivor Godfather type role where he's telling everyone else how to play Survivor and feels like he needs to be the coach. He's treating everyone like he was treating Banu, which I think is going to get to it was already starting to piss off Kinsey and Tiffany, his closest allies. And if it's starting to piss off Tiffany, Q's screwed. I don't see Q making it another 3 episodes right now. I think
if he keeps going the way he's going.
Yeah, I think he's going to be in a really bad spot. So I think my guess would be Charlie's motivation was seeing, okay, Venus is clearly on the bottom. And so that means she is a number, right? And we just lost a number. So if I can be honest and at least let her know what happened, that gives me a number going into a split tribal, because they know a split tribal is coming up, right? They have to know that that's coming up next. They're all smart. They know what's coming, or they don't know because anything could change in Survivor, but they're kind of expecting it at this point. I think his real misstep, though, was doing it publicly. I don't think he should have told anyone. I think he should have just pulled her aside and said, hey, it was me. I don't think the problem was telling Venus, because she's on the bottom. It's like Caleb and Emily, right? Like, aligning with the outcast is not a bad thing. You just have to do it right. And so I just think that he did it a little too publicly. That's my thought, but we also obviously we're only seeing a little piece of it.
Yeah. Moving on to the next part of the episode, which is basically from here, just jump straight into the immunity challenge.
Well, I'd say...
Unless I'm missing something.
There's one little moment before this, which is when they're sleeping.
Ben's panic. Ben's panic attack.
Yeah. In the night. And it's just the moment with when Ben wakes up in the night from having a panic attack and Kinsey helps him and comforts him through the night and stays up with him. And I really liked seeing this moment. The fact that they kept this moment in when they could have very easily cut it, right? And because I feel like there's a lot of moments that are kind of like this that they cut for time in favor of more tribal council or more challenge or more strategy or whatever. And they kept this one in, which my thinking here is you keep this moment in for one of two reasons. When I'm watching the episode, I'm thinking they keep this in because Ben is going home or because Kinsey goes really far. Because I don't think Ben is the winner right now. So it's either Ben's going home or Ben is the winner at the end. Maybe I'm wrong, but right now I don't really see that. But I think Kinsey could be sitting in the final three. We've talked about this. Ayanu, and I don't
honestly
really think it's...
If I was going to say my final three right now, my final three would be Kinsey, Tiffany, Hunter. That would be my ideal final three. Ideal final three.
Ideal final three, yes.
I think the two most likely are Kinsey and Tiffany.
I'm pretty confident those two sit at the final three. I think that duo makes it all the way to the end. I really see that happening. And then I don't know who goes with them all the way. I don't see Hunter making it all the way.
What I want to happen so badly, I want Hunter, Tevin, Kinsey, Tiffany, and Q to make a 5. And then Hunter, Tevin, Tiffany, and Kinsey stick together and vote out Q at final 5. Then the final 4 of them go to the fire making challenge. And whatever happens from there happens. If that was the final 4 this season, I would be so happy and satisfied.
You would be so happy. That's like your whole team.
You have Kinsey.
I know I have Kinsey.
I was thinking about that last night when I was going to bed. I have 7 of the 10 left.
Yeah. I have Kinsey, I have Maria, and I have Venus.
Mm-hmm.
And Kinsey was always the one that I wanted, right? Kinsey was always the person from the beginning, my preseason winner pick. So that's where at this point, I'm happy with the fact that she's doing very well. Because she was always the one that I was picking to win.
He has an immunity win under her belt.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, she's killing it. And I think Tiff killing it too. The both of them, I see the both of them sitting there at the end. This moment was a really cool moment, kind of bringing it back. I liked that they showed this moment of vulnerability. And it was interesting in the On Fire podcast, something that Jeff talked about was that this is something that players that they casted 15 years ago
would not have done.
It wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have, this moment would have never happened. And that now they don't cast, they're not interested in casting players who aren't willing to have some level of emotional vulnerability. Yeah. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on that and have a little bit of a conversation on this, which is why I didn't want to jump straight into the challenge, because I thought that was an interesting thing he brought up, because we've talked a little bit about this, not so much on the podcast, but a little bit out of it too, about casting. So I'm just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Honestly, hearing Jeff say that made so much more sense in my mind by what he means by not casting villains. And I think Jeff made a really good point, how Survivor has always been a reflection, a microcosm of society. Mm-hmm. And 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, people being mean to each other for no reason was a lot more accepted. And like it or not, cancel culture has become a really big thing. And just being mean to someone for no reason is just... We as a society have changed so much over the last couple of years, and that is directly reflected in the cast of Survivor. And honestly, I think I really am starting to agree with Jeff, and I think given the way that society is now, I think honestly just the way villains in Survivor work now, I think has just shifted as well. So I think the definition of a Survivor villain is different. Whereas I think villains back then, I think there are two kind of sides to the coin. You could have a villain who is really crafty and sneaky and a snake. And then you can have a villain who's just a bully and just not a nice person. You have those two sides of the coin for a villain. But now in this new era, when I think Survivor villain, I just think someone who is very strategic, maybe plays under the radar, isn't afraid to blindside people and to blindside their own allies. Tevin is not afraid to blindside Soda, who he is aligned with right now. But that doesn't mean they're a bad person. That doesn't mean they're a bully. That doesn't mean they're mean to their other castaways. So that's my opinion on what Jeff has been talking about. And I think it's just, it really has to do with how our culture has shifted over the course of Survivor's 25-year history.
Yeah, and I think also when we're saying, because I think there's also like, it's hard to put into words, but being mean is such like a broad, it's like such a broad thing to say, because I think there have been plenty of moments this season where players have been mean to one another, or they have done things that have felt quote unquote mean, but they're not being vindictive, right?
Yeah.
They're not attacking them personally, right?
Yeah, they're not attacking their character.
Yeah, right? They're not going after them as right, with Banu, okay? Yanu did not want Banu on their tribe, right? Because he was not a good player. But they never attacked his character as a person. And they never attacked his character as a person. No matter how much he annoyed them, they were always as understanding and empathetic as they possibly could be towards him. Mm-hmm. And the show was always like that. They always treated him with the utmost empathy, respect, and care. And so I think that is the new sort of idea of this villain. When Jeff says they're not interested in casting villains, he's not interested in casting, one, he just wants to cast interesting people. But two, they're not villains in the traditional sense of Survivor. They're not going to be someone who's just going to be mean, who's going to attack your character. And so I think that the fact that that's something that they care about in casting when they're hiring, to bring this all home, what Jeff was talking about in the podcast, and that is something that they look for in casting, is that they need someone who has some level of emotional vulnerability to go on Survivor. The fact that you cannot be a closed door, you have to be able to communicate your emotions to some degree because you're on this island with other people, I think is interesting and not something I'd thought about. And there's going to be some people that are going to say, that's kind of woke. That's Survivor wokeness. Survivor's changed too much. I don't like this new era. I don't like whatever. I think that that's stupid if that's all you can take away from that comment. I think that this humanizes the people, right? They're not characters. It's not scripted. They're real human beings on this island, living lives, and they all come from different experiences. So I liked the fact that we got to see an actual human interaction moment here on the island.
Let's move on to the next part of the episode, which is the immunity challenge. The last time we had this immunity challenge was in 42, which ended very, very quickly. For those who have not seen 42, I won't spoil anything about necessarily who wins the challenge, because I don't even remember who wins the challenge, but it lasted like 2 minutes because the ocean was crazy rough. And when they were doing it today, it literally looked like they were on a lake. It was like glass. So that was pretty interesting to see the very stark contrast. But have this immunity challenge, and we get this really cool moment that I feel like we don't really get all the time, of them bantering with each other, Tim and Q bantering with Jeff. That was so funny whenever he said, "What's up, Jeff?" And he was like, "What's up, Tim?" And he was like, No, that's him asking for the time.
Yeah.
A few minutes later, he's like, "What's up, Jeff? You are 20 minutes into to phase 2.
Yeah, that was it. I love these these moments where we get to see the interactions between Jeff and the Survivor cast, the castaways. Like we've seen it a lot this season. I feel like more than we see in other seasons, like the Nami headband on the idol and him cutting it off, and
Soda at the merge challenge.
Yeah,
so good.
When he was like, "Have you watched Survivor before or whatever?" Like
something like
thing. And there's been a lot of that this season, and even last season, like him stabbing the rice and all the like. There's just so much he has started, and he talked about this in On Fire too, how he is evolving with the game too, and as the game changes and shifts, and as he grows in his own life, like as he has had kids and has a family and all this stuff, like his relationship with Survivor changes, his relationship with the players has changed. And as we are watching this season and season 3 and have finished watching season 1 and 2, we can see a really stark contrast in the way he engages with the game now versus the way he did then. And it's really like he's super formal in these early seasons. It's a job. He is there doing a day job, taking it very seriously. And now he's just having a good time. He's just happy to be there. He's excited every day. And so, I love these moments. I think that this challenge, one of the best challenges, the challenge itself, boring. Not that exciting. The challenge as a whole, one of
just
the
most
sequence. One of the most fun challenges to watch. I mean, at least I've seen out of the newer, I've seen this season 45 and 44, the most fun challenge I've watched in terms of like entertainment value.
Yeah,
out of these 3 seasons.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So we got some really cool moments with that, and then we get a Kinsey and a Maria immunity challenge win, both pretty well deserved.
Tevin almost did.
Yeah, Tevin was really close. That recovery he had was really impressive.
Very
he did really good. So we have those immunity wins, first individual immunity challenge of the season, and then we have the one side of Kinsey, Q, Tiffany, Ben, Tim, and Hunter going off to the old Siga beach, and then we have the remaining 6 of Charlie, Maria, Venus, Liz, Soda. Hold on. And Tevin. I don't know why I forgot Tevin.
Yep.
Okay. Going off to the Nami Beach where they've been staying. And this is where the meat of the episode takes place. We spend a lot of time in the pre-tribal council phase of the episode. We spend probably like 20-30 minutes in this part of the episode.
I think probably maybe 40 minutes. Like, I mean, it's a lot. Yeah, at least 30 minutes.
So I think the most convoluted part of this was what the heck was going on at the Nami Beach. That was so much to handle. You had Venus originally wanting to get out Charlie and originally wanted to get out Charlie.
Well, okay, I don't even think you can say. I think you have to start from the top down. It is. From outside perspective, it is
4 Nami versus 2
Siga.
Original Siga.
And one of them has immunity.
Yeah.
So Charlie, odd man out. And so it is clear the obvious vote is Charlie. She assumed it was Charlie. From that point is when all the craziness starts to go down.
The descent kind of starts when Soda approaches Charlie and is like, hey, we're not gonna vote for you. We're gonna tell everyone that we're voting for you, but we're gonna put the votes on Venus. And Soda tells Tevin that, and Tevin's like, yeah, that's good. And then Tevin is like, no, I don't want to get out Venus. Let's get out Soda. So let's let Soda believe the vote is Venus, and then Tevin wants the vote to be Soda. And then you have Venus, who has her own plan outside of Tevin to rope in Maria and Charlie to get Soda out. So you have Tevin.
Just because she's left out, nobody has talked to her. So she's just left out of the loop. And she's on Survivor. I don't blame her.
No, I don't blame her either.
All anyone needed to do was go tell her a plan. That's all you have to do. Tell her a plan. None of the crazy, nothing happens.
Yeah. The craziness happens is because no one had talked to Venus. So Venus comes up with her own plan of I want to work with Charlie. I don't care that you threw my name out. Let's work together and we'll get Soda out. And then Tevin wants to get Soda out. So there's two plans accomplishing the same goal that they both don't know about. And I think Jeff and Dee really provided some good insight into Venus's game this season. And I really liked what Dee said in the On Fire podcast. I don't know if you agree with what Dee said, but I really agree with what Dee said about Venus.
Well, do you want to recap what Dee said?
Yeah.
And then we can discuss it.
So basically what Dee said was she thinks Venus is a really good player, which I agree with. She thinks that she has really good game sense and has a good grasp on the game and knows the moves to make. But the way that she's approaching people is not necessarily the best because she has her defenses up. And I really liked what Dee said, where she basically said, you need to contextualize in your mind that them having this disdain for you is their problem, but you have to deal with it. And I completely agree with that. I don't agree with the way that people have been treating Venus. It's inherently their problem and their mental roadblocks, I guess, to get over. But sadly, it is Venus's problem to navigate.
Yeah, if she wants to win, she has to jump through the hoops. Yeah, I agree with that. And I also, the context that Jeff provided as well with
Venus's background.
Some of Venus's background, which we already knew some of these pieces. We'd been given some in the episode and some in her backstory before the season. But just as to why she plays the way she does and why she goes so hard to defend the women and not take crap from the men makes her gameplay make a lot of sense and makes me stan her even more. The really interesting thing that I would like to talk about as we're in this moment here, right? She talks to Maria here and she proposes, hey, would you consider Tevin? Because she's throwing out every name. I just want what is going to stick with you guys. You're the only person safe. Who do you want to vote? I don't understand what's happening. Nobody's talking to me. What about Tevin? Because you're not biting on any other name. And Maria is just I don't know. I'm not going to promise you anything. And then later, Venus follows up and is like, hey, what is happening tonight? And Maria is still kind of antsy about it. And then Venus is just finally like, okay, what is it? Is it me? Just tell me. And this is the first time that someone has told Venus anything. So I kind of respect Maria for saying it, but I also didn't like Maria's answer because I thought it was really stupid. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. Maria was just like, you came at me. You came at me really hard. And it felt like you were trying to force me into something. I didn't feel like Venus was trying to force anything on her in that moment. I was really confused by that whole conversation.
I think the impressions that I get is the reason Maria feels like she was being quote unquote attacked is because everyone perceives Venus to be on the bottom. It's almost like an ego thing, maybe, where you perceive yourself as being in a higher status, especially if you want immunity and you know you're safe. But you perceive yourself as a higher status than someone else on the tribe. And so when they approach you, and instead of being like, okay, what do you want to do? And proposing, this is what I want to do, then in their minds, they think that they're being attacked and forced into a plan because they think that they're in the position of power and should be calling the shots. And that person should just come to them and be like, hey, what do you want to do? So let's figure out a plan. Let's work together. And I think that stems back to, sadly, that is Venus's problem to figure out. it's a problem with Maria, but sadly, Venus has to learn how to deal with it. And so that's why I think Venus is going to win the season? No. But if she comes back and she is able to learn from what she did in this season, she can win. She can win so easily.
I think Venus is a lock to come back in a future season. I don't know if did you see that she was at Marianne's wedding?
Yeah, I did. Which I thought that was weird that she was at Marianne's wedding, but and the season hadn't even aired yet. I don't know if there were any other 46ers at Maria's wedding.
Only one.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
She's friends with Marianne now. Apparently, in Survivor, whenever you get cast on Survivor, the Survivor cast, they all become they become friends with each other really quickly. I guess.
Yeah, but this cast was announced.
I know, but
a couple months ago.
I know, to the public.
Yeah, I guess then because they had to have cast they had to have actually made the casting over a year ago.
Yeah,
probably 2 years ago at this point.
But they filmed it last summer.
Yeah, they filmed last summer, so they probably made the casting call in late 2022.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, I don't know how that all works, but they, Survivor newbies and Survivor vets, they become friends super quickly. It's very weird. I don't understand how that whole culture works, but they all go, especially during the season when Survivor is airing, and there's Survivor watch parties. Survivor vets host watch parties, and the current cast, they split up and they go hang out at all these different watch parties. And it's always interesting. It's all right, who is invited to what watch party? Were there any cast members not at watch parties? And it's always who's not at a watch party? And then there was this whole thing where people were oh my goodness, Venus wasn't at so-and-so's watch party. And then they were oh, well, she was hanging out at this really big event with all these other much more notable Survivor alum. And it's Venus is hanging out with a lot of Survivor.
She's hanging out with the winners.
She's hanging out with the most Survivor people. It's just interesting. Did you see her table at Marianne's wedding?
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was so fun. It was such a crazy, interesting table. And then also Carson was there.
Yeah,
and Carson's in really
he's in a
deep
weird
water
spot
right now.
Yeah, he's in a weird spot.
I want to get him on the podcast just to ask some talk about his season, but also he's not going to answer questions. But
he won't.
I really want to just hey, let's talk about the puzzles. What's up, bro? Just see let's come on, let's talk about it. Anyways, yeah. I don't remember how we got on that.
Just talking about Venus.
Yeah, Venus. She's got to figure it out. She's going to come back. I'm very confident Venus will return. Maybe that's we're going to do a superlatives episode after this season, and so maybe
most likely to come back.
We'll have a list of the most, we could rank them most likely to return or something. That could be fun. I'm pretty confident she's going to return if they do a returnee season ever.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think we can now transition to what was going on over at the Siga beach. Essentially, you have the 3 original Yanu, Anami, and 2 Siga. And it's basically you have Yanu in the power position. They basically get to make the decision, do they want to send a Nami home or do they want to send a Siga home? That's basically what it boils down to.
Or do they want to send a Yanu home? Because technically they could send home Q.
Yes.
I don't think they were ever really considering it.
No, it was more just they were saying he's getting on our nerves right now.
I think they were setting that up because it's going to happen in the next episode or two.
I agree. It's setting up so that when it happens, it's not coming out of nowhere. But I don't think it was ever a possibility that crossed their minds at this tribal council.
Yeah, I agree.
So you have Hunter wanting to side with the Yanu people and vote out Siga. You have Tim and Ben wanting to side with the Yanu 3 and vote out Hunter. And you basically get this interactions between all of them where at first they want to vote out Ben because they perceived him as a bigger threat than Tim, which I agree with because Tim throughout this season and in this episode proved that he didn't have a ton of game sense, and the game that he was playing was very obvious and very one-sided.
He's easy to read.
Yeah. So that was their motives for wanting to go Ben over Tim, and then Tim just ended up pissing them off, and so they switched their vote to Tim instead of Ben.
Yeah, what was interesting about this side of the beach was there were a lot of interesting dynamics here, because obviously you've got the Yanu 3, then you've got this Journey 6 alliance, where you've got Hunter and Tiff and Q and Tim, who are they're 4 of the 6. So that would leave Ben on the outs, which is why he was the original vote. But Kinsey likes Ben. So I don't think Kinsey really wanted Ben, but Ben is the smart vote. And so there's this like voting with your brain versus voting with your heart. And then there's also, obviously, Tim doesn't want to vote out Ben. And so he's in this group of 6. So he really wants to vote out Hunter, who is also in the group of 6. And so Q, what was really interesting over here, though, is like Q is flip-flopping a lot. And that's what started to really piss off Tiff and Kinsey.
Because he was like, do you want to vote out Ben? What if he plays in the shot of dark? Well, you want to vote out Tim? And it's like he kept being like kind of just getting mad at Tiffany. And it felt like it was just coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was very, very conspiracy theorist vibes, very sporadic kind of behavior, or not sporadic, but like erratic behavior. And like it was so, just because he was just like so set on Tim, right? And then he went and he talked to Ben and basically was like, all right, hey, if we vote, who do you want to vote? And Ben was like, Hunter. And he was like, okay, if we vote Hunter, who do we tell him the vote is? And Ben was like, all right, well, you could tell him the vote's me. And he's like, well, what if he has something? Or he plays a shot in the dark? He's like, well, that's the risk we got to take. And then that was enough reason for Q to be like, okay, yeah, hey, Ben is comfortable. Now let's change the vote to Ben. And Kinsey and Tiff were just like so confused. They were like, how, like, of course that's the answer Ben is going to give you. And so it started to make Q look like not as good as a strategist as maybe we thought he was, or maybe he's just like in panic, frantic mode. I don't know. It's really tough for me to get a read on Q on this island. I'm having a harder and harder time at reading Q. But also, Jeff alluded to something in On Fire, if you remember, about how Q is going to, like, how he kind of like was using this challenge, like used the immunity challenge game as a chance to like learn from other people, and how he's going to do that in a challenge again this season.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. So Jeff said that it's not the last time Q does that. So I guess that's how we know if in the next immunity challenge that doesn't happen, he's not voted out this next episode. So that's good to know. But anyways, the whole Q situation was interesting, but did solidify that Kinsey and Tiffany are the real duo.
Yeah, they're more solid than Tiffany and Q.
Which is not how it had been really until this point, in my mind.
At least how it had been portrayed.
Yeah. And I don't think Kinsey and Tiffany were that close until the merge.
Yeah.
But now it really seems like, okay, they are a duo. But to everyone else, it looks like Tiffany and Q.
Yeah.
But it looks like Q's in charge, which is how Tiffany and Kinsey go all the way to the end. Because Q is their meat shield.
Yeah.
It's going to be really big. It's so big brain for the two of them. That's where I legitimately think the two of them have a clear shot to the end. I think unless something crazy happens, they actually have such a good route to the end. And I think all three of them could sit at the end.
Yeah.
Like it could be the Yanu 3. I don't think that happens. That would be really, really impressive. But I think the three of them could be in the final 4 and Q gets out.
One of them would just have to win fire.
Yeah, but it'd be incredibly impressive.
So, moving on to the actual tribals.
Yep.
We have a pretty clean tribal with the Nami Beach tribal is the one I want to actually talk about a little bit more as we kind of wrap up.
Yeah.
But we have the tribal from the Siga Beach. Hunter makes a correct read and doesn't play his idol, which is good for him. Very good read on his part, good gameplay, and good that he gets to keep his idol because it's risky to not play your idol in that situation. So good on him for not getting psyched out. Clean vote. Tim went home.
How do you feel about Tim going home? We talked about this already, but I don't know if you've had more thoughts on it since we watched the episode.
Of the 6 at the beach, I think the 5 that are left are the most deserving to be sitting on the jury. So I feel totally fine with the Tim vote.
I'm happy with Tim going home over Ben because I would rather Ben be on the jury than Tim just because of how much we've seen of each of them. And this is purely just from watching the game, not from them as people even, purely from who we have seen more of. We've seen more of Ben. I would rather see Ben. Now, if we're looking at everyone who is here, I would rather see Tim on the jury than Liz, because we haven't seen Liz at all. Not to say that Liz isn't deserving of being there, because she's just been invisible at this point, and that's a production issue, not a Liz issue.
She literally had an episode. There's an episode where she had 0 confessionals.
Yeah, it's actually crazy.
Someone making the merge, you at least got to give them 1 per episode. But besides the point, the last little bit of our episode, I'd like to talk about what happens in the Nami Beach vote. So Soda ends up being the vote. The votes that go on Soda are Charlie, Maria, Liz, and Venus. Those 4 who vote for Soda. Soda and Tevin vote for Venus. And the last that Tevin had a confessional or any strategy, he was still going for Soda. So I don't know where that flip came from. And the thing is, on Fire, there D and J.
They didn't address it.
No, they did. They did.
Really? Wait, I didn't remember.
But they called it Tevin's move.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. They didn't really
So I'm almost
they
wondering.
Didn't address the flip.
I'm almost wondering, did Tevin vote for Venus because he already didn't like her? Did he vote for Venus to not make Soda upset and keep her vote if she's on the jury?
That's the theory I've seen online, is jury management.
That is my only thought, but I really don't know, because there was never a point after he threw out Soda's name and was talking to Maria and Charlie about voting off Soda, and when he talked to Liz and said, let's vote out Soda, there was never a point where he flopped back to Venus. Unless I'm misremembering, there was never a point where he said, okay, let's go Venus now. So him voting Venus felt completely out of left field. So I really want to know what he goes... I want to be able to see the start of next episode and see what his thought process was, because it was not explained at all in the episode. So that is what my theory is that he knew the votes were going to be on Soda, so he just voted for Venus to not piss Soda off. That was my only explanation, because they're still calling it Tevin's move. It just depends on when we see the little insert clip of him at Tribal being upset that Soda looked at Venus and said, oh, this was your move? And she said, yeah. I wasn't sure if the insert clip of him saying no after they revealed the votes, was that him being upset that Venus was claiming the move, or him being upset that Soda was the one who went home and not Venus.
Well, I don't know whether he's which one he's upset about. Here's my thought. 2 scenarios, right? He did it because he wanted Venus out. He changed his mind, and it wasn't his move. He actually wanted to try to get Venus out, and Venus flipped Charlie and Maria. She actually did it. That's one scenario. I would be shocked if that is actually what happened, but that's one scenario. Puts a vote on Venus for some reason. So he puts a vote on Venus for some reason. One reason is jury management. I think that is incredibly dumb. If it's jury management, I think that's a stupid reason. And I would like to hear his reasoning for that. Because, first of all, I don't know why you're worried about jury management right now. Because what matters more, the whole thing was you said you needed to make big moves to get to the end. And now you're just kind of hiding your big move. So what did you think was going to happen here? Was that you're going to not vote for her, but it's still your move? Like, what did you think was going to happen? It's either your move or it's not. And so if it is your move, there's no jury management whatsoever. And if there is jury management and you don't want to piss her off, then it is not your move and you cannot claim it at the end when you're sitting at Final Tribal Council. I would own the move, say, it's Survivor, I'm sorry, I thought you were going to beat me. If I lose your vote because of that, it sucks. But I hope that you respect me as a person. I don't buy jury management, so I think it has to be there would have to be another reason. And if it is jury management, I think that's a dumb move. I think that that's a really bad move on his part. And I might be wrong. Maybe that is the right move. But based on the reaction, perception is reality in Survivor. We've seen that with the way Venus has been treated the whole game, right? It doesn't matter whether she's cunning, conniving, a diva, all these other things people say. All that matters is that people think that's that. Right now, it doesn't matter if she orchestrated the blindside or not. Soda thinks she did. And so if other people, because half the people weren't there, if they think she did, or if like that can be the narrative that is spun for the rest of the time, or if enough doubt can be cast as to whose idea it actually was, it's a resume builder. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And the fact that Tevin wasn't in on the vote immediately discredits him being able to say it was his move.
Yeah. Last thing I guess I'll say about that is I think Venus's threat level has gone up now. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the people's perception of her is now that she has successfully made a move. Do people start giving her some respect? Do they start including her in on stuff? Or do they think, oh my gosh, this girl actually was able to do something. We need to get her out now.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know. It's interesting because we're at this weird spot where there's like a lot of big physical threats in the game. And normally
the season's only halfway over.
Normally you'd kind of start trying to get them out. You start whacking them. You'd start worrying about these idols that are laying around. Nobody's really thinking about that stuff. For all the strategy that's going on, it feels like there's not a whole lot of strategy going on as well. It's kind of weird. And so I think things are about to kick into high gear. Now that we're getting out of this split tribal, we're about to get into like legit Survivor post-merge with the jury. It feels very much like it is from a number standpoint, tribal lines are gone for the exception of Yanu. And even there, it's just a duo. So really, it's duos across the board and then some loose trios. So it's actually a pretty even game across the board. And I actually really am interested to see where things go from here.
Well, now that we have been going for quite more than several minutes, do you have anything you want to say about episode several as we wrap up here?
The last thing I do want to touch on was that this is the first time that I have ever noticed that a part of the season has actually been leaked by official Survivor.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
You didn't see it, but like I had seen it. Going into the episode, I knew Kinsey won immunity. And so it's something that like a lot of people knew, but Survivor, like the official Survivor account, they posted a preview of the episode, and there's a clip where Kinsey's group is walking to Tribal, and she's wearing the immunity necklace. And so I knew who was in her group and that she won immunity. and I was pissed. And a bunch of people on the internet were as well. And I wouldn't have seen it if some lugnut dummy head didn't screenshot it and share it on Twitter and say, "Why would Survivor post this?" Like, that's so annoying. Don't do that. Like, I don't what are you? You are the problem. Don't do that. And so then I saw it as well. And then it became a whole thing and a bunch of people saw it. So it's interesting because usually Survivor's really on top of that sort of thing, but they kind of messed it up. That was another interesting thing that happened this week where it was spoiled for me, but you got lucky. You didn't stumble across that, but it was shared by all their social channels. Survivor, like, yeah, they shared it in like all their official promo stuff. So
did they take it down?
I think so. I would assume so. I don't know. It might have even been in the preview that they showed episode? On TV.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I didn't catch it.
Yeah, it was like a quick thing, but like people caught it, and then it was like going around online, and they were like, "What the heck?" And then everybody was like, "Maybe it's not it. Maybe," because Kinsey likes making stuff on the beach, and that's like kind of her thing, and I love it. And they're like, "I think Kinsey probably just made that," and then Survivor had the audacity to post a photo of the necklace. And it's like, it's the exact same thing. And I was like, oh my God. And that's when I texted you and I was like, all right, I know one of the people who won. I'm not going to tell you, but I'm pissed. Anyways. Yeah, I think that was the other notable thing that happened this week that I think was crazy. I've never seen that happen with Survivor. They're usually on top of that sort of thing. Someone got fired. Sorry, bro.
All right. Well, if you don't have anything else to add, I think we can wrap up this week's recap episode of Survivor 46, episode several. Thank you so much for listening. You can check us out wherever you listen to podcasts, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. And check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Idle Talk Podcast. We would really appreciate you following us there and your support. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, feel free to give us a rating and review, as it would help our podcast grow a lot. Thank you so much for listening.
We'll see you guys in the next one.